I sat in on the appeals court first half hour this morning,
Yeah.
which was fascinating.
Where at?
Next door.
Oh. For which case?
Lucy Wallingford versus the city of Norway concerning the process issues around the Lions Act change in plan.
Appellate court. Who are they appealing from?
District court from the city.
Oh, they brought it down here?
Yeah,
Huh.
that was cool. They said they hadn't been here in 14 years.
That's neat. That's
It
super
was
neat.
really fun.
They have a panel of 3 judges.
Judy, look who's here.
Have them sit.
I busted
Really?
my butt, I'm telling you.
That's cute. Usually they have the fun coach. I mean, it's fun.
intact
It's
to
more
me.
people
Well,
when they interrupt
I did
you.
a tour.
It's a fun.
and I was worried if all the people in
Like,
town,
why
I was
would you
worried I'd be
expect,
late.
why would the government
I said, don't
expect
vote
us
on
to take
anything,
this
I'm coming.
position?
What do you really want us to do?
Yeah.
Don't vote on anything till I get there. So, yes, and
They would
so
do it for the
I had a
law
conversation
school that I was
yesterday
in.
with,
They'd make people come present in front of us, and it was really
in
neat.
my office.
But the attorneys
No,
hated it
no.
because,
I moved court.
Still sitting.
well, it wasn't. Yeah, it was
Anyway,
the
she's
appellate
in
court,
Jan's
but they would
office.
just force the attorneys to come present. And the case, the best
It's embarrassing.
case, I can't
Jen,
remember what it was
Jen, the
about.
other Jen, that
But
Jen,
this
not
guy,
Jen, the one that helps Jen.
I can't remember what he was
Anyway,
appealing, but
she
you
says
can't
they're
want to
really
give the
hard
facts.
times.
You don't want to give the facts up and goes what's going on. And so the judge interrupted him and said, "Sir, are you going to provide the facts?" He's like, "Your Honor, he's really nervous. He's really shaking." And the judge was like, "All right, here are the facts. This guy got pulled over by a cop, shot at the cop, stole the cop car, it's funny at first, then it turns dark really quick. He goes to a park.
No, I'm not saying,
Elderly woman
what I'm
walking
saying
with a
is,
cat.
we have something that
Stops.
shows the new roads. He said, how do the new roads? Well, he did it,
He puts
and
her in
the
the back
newer
of the
roads
police
that
car,
weren't.
does a pseudo arrest, takes her to
So he overlaid it over the County GPS or whatever.
But
He overlaid
the fact about it was
state
just so
over what's
incredibly
current, so we
odd.
figured out.
and
And I
unique,
said, and we've
but
already
he just
paid
didn't
for
want
it.
to talk about it.
Instead of being paid
Well,
for it, and I
But
was
it
even
was super, like,
I'm thinking
I don't
you
know,
could give.
attorneys are all fucked up.
Does that make sense? You understand what I'm saying? Yeah.
You don't normally have a case like that.
Well,
They're all
because
just
I
sitting
she
there.
was, you're kidding, and I said, yeah, because and it was pretty current, because they
Look at
downloaded
each other
what was
like,
current, and then
Because at first it's like a fun Grand Theft Auto,
she says,
and then it has that dark twist at the end.
But
They
But
had
district
one
court,
attorney cry,
right, look at.
didn't appeal very well at district court, and the judge started pleadings, and like it turned out kind of, he started falling from 40, 50
Yeah,
law school students.
Yeah,
There was all types,
But I'm
but
thinking.
usually it's really awkward because a lot of the
We're paying
attorneys,
to do it, so
you get all
it'd be
types.
great if we got some
You
use
get
out of it.
great attorneys that can orient, talk.
These guys,
You gave it one.
Usually, for whatever reason, most of the government attorneys have a lot of experience with doing talking. Walt is not coming today.
oh,
He's not back yet.
we're supposed to,
He emailed me or texted me or something. So he was going to miss tomorrow or something.
I thought he was coming back last night.
Yeah, I did too.
Delayed, missed a connection or something.
Are we ready to?
Well, we don't have our attorney. Your
Oh,
attorney.
whoops. Okay, sorry. Up here.
But you could start. You got a claim.
Who's Jeremy?
I haven't heard anything.
Well, he didn't say he wasn't,
No.
I think so, because he told me, he knew I was gonna be, I thought I'd be like 30 minutes late, so I'm
You said he
excited.
was or wasn't?
He's west.
What are we doing about what's the status on Carter? Still holding?
They had a hard opinion that it was the wrong board.
Carter who?
My great nephew's in extended care in Denver Children's Hospital waiting for a heart.
Oh my goodness.
They were,
Oh, it's,
and has a PICC line with medicine that goes right to his heart. And
he's been over there.
He's been in there 4 weeks. He's been there for 3 months, but he's been, they brought him in because they had a heart, and they brought him in, and they had to wait overnight because they had thick in his blood.
Hey,
So
sweetie, how are
they
you?
do surgery.
That
And
feels good. You? Been
because
good.
his heart is, there's only
Even
3
though my
hearts. There's
sister is
3 worst
my
hearts they've ever
airport
seen.
manager.
He's one.
So wait, was this congenital?
He was one. Well, yeah, and see, the bad thing is did the ultrasound herself instead of sending me one, so she didn't catch it. And if they would have caught it, they could have done surgery before I was born and fixed his heart. So she hurried up, moved to Canada.
Wait, if they would have caught it, they could have what?
They could have done surgery prenatal
Oh, my God.
before she was born and fixed
They're
his
so
heart.
successful.
They're successful. It's just really heartbreaking, and it's awful hard to.
Well, somebody
Really
else has to
hard for a
lose their
heart.
baby in order for Carter.
That's right. That's so it's.
That's the time you just rip your heart out.
Yeah.
Yeah, she does.
So it's been a long summer. He had surgery at 3 days, 3 months, and his surgery after the 3 months. Do you want to guess what his medical bill was?
$300,000.
$651,000.
No, high. Come on, really high, real high, real high.
$32 million.
Well, you're a little more high. 8 million.
You know,
It's from
medical bills
poison
probably
company.
cost-
No.
Cause of bankruptcy.
Well, I told him, I said, I gotta tell you, you're lucky you have nothing. Have nothing.
You know what they say, if you owe the bank $10,000, they got you. You owe them 10 million, you got them by the balls. Yeah, that's right. 8 million, that's silly.
Let's change the subject.
For people like us. Yeah.
Well,
But
there's
even,
nothing to take.
it's a silly number for you and me,
Yeah.
old people,
Yeah.
grown-ups.
So how's Glenna holding up? Heartbroken?
Being so far from Denver.
Yeah, I knew that was
Well, maybe we'll get sorted on some of the things and we can come back to this.
Be a good minute, you know.
Let me know.
Didn't we ask for permission?
Chrissy responded, said she couldn't be here.
So we don't
And
have
it's
any
not-
information?
We're not talking about.
We're not talking about it, okay.
Yep, we're ready. All right, the time is 12:05. We're going to call to order the Grand County Changing Form of Government Study Committee meeting. Today is Friday, October 18th, 2019. And present we have Judy Carmichael, Marcy Till, Bob Greenberg, Cricket Green, absent Walt Dabney, Jeremy Day, and I'm present as well, and I'm Stephen Stocks. First, we're going to begin with the pledge. Do we have any volunteers to begin the pledge? Cricket? If everyone would please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated.
Did we get the date and time?
We did. Okay. The time is 12:05, Friday, October 18th, 2019. First, we have approval of the minutes. Everyone has the minutes in their packet. If people have not already gone through and looked at the minutes, and we can start off any changes if anybody has any changes to make.
I've got some notes.
Perfect. Mr. Greenberg.
On page 2, on the third paragraph from the bottom, the last sentence. Further, she said that Grand County's precincts have not been updated since 1992 and appear to be illegal. It should be districts and precincts, and I'd suggest we just drop the last phrase since they've not been updated as population has grown. They're just illegal. And why they're illegal is because they're such different numbers. So I'd say that's kind of misleading.
Okay, so would now read further. She said Grand County's districts and precincts have not been updated since 1992 and appear to be illegal, period.
Yes, that's my suggestion. On page 3, in the second paragraph, again, the last sentence is a little confused. County Attorney Sloan reiterated that one cannot delegate powers enumerated in the Constitution by implication. is what she said.
paragraph are we in?
Second paragraph
Okay.
from the top, last sentence. Oh, no, second last sentence. So it should read, County Attorney Sloan reiterated that one cannot delegate powers enumerated in the Constitution by implication, period. It's not just districting powers, and what she was arguing was that
Constitutional powers.
also maybe state what is being removed?
So what now the line would read, County Attorney Salone reiterated that one cannot violate the Constitution to delegate powers enumerated in the Constitution by implication. Thus, we would be striking the districting and adding enumerated in the Constitution by implication, if I understand Mr. Greenberg correctly.
Yes.
So we do still keep the verbiage about violating?
No.
Could you read the full sentence?
Yeah, that was the first sentence you just read.
The County Attorney Salone reiterated that one cannot violate the Constitution.
Cannot delegate
cannot
powers
delegate-
enumerated in the Constitution by implication.
And so this part of the sentence that's being removed for the record
Mm-hmm.
Right.
is,
The district.
is the part that says violate.
Yeah,
In other words, we're gonna
violate
use the-
and to
keep the word
delegate
cannot,
districting.
Cannot delegate. We're gonna delete cannot, we're gonna leave that word cannot in there, but we're gonna
Yes.
delete violate the Constitution to delegate the districting powers.
Yeah, we're going to delete that and say,
Got that?
delete powers enumerated in the Constitution
Right.
by implication.
Okay, yeah.
The rest are kind of trivial, I won't bother you with them. It's just my compulsive editing, except maybe there's one more. On page 6, in the middle it says motion, 2 paragraphs above that. Chairman Stocks suggested replacing and revising, essentially starting over, and remarking that the draft optional plan which has submitted has been rejected. I don't remember what you really said, Steve, but I'm guessing you might have said found to be out of compliance with the
Right.
state constitution and Utah code
Right.
rather than rejected.
I would say that's fair.
So instead of rejected,
Found to be out of compliance with the state constitution and Utah code. So delete the word rejected
out of compliance.
with the state constitution and Utah code.
Other changes?
Move we adopt as amended?
We've got a motion to adopt the minutes as amended. Do we have a second? Judy Carmichael on the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to vote. All those in favor of adopting the minutes with the approved edits, please raise your hand. Okay, passes 5-0. Moving on to general reports, we have a motion to perhaps table this item as we do not have Mr. Anderson here. Okay, motion to table. Do we have a second? Second. Any discussion? We've got a motion to table item B because Mr. Anderson is not here. We've got a second by Mr. Greenberg. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously 5-0. So we'll come back to that after Mr. Anderson is back. Community outreach and possible actions. We have none. Moving now on to citizens to be heard. Now is your chance. If anyone out there would like, come on forward and talk. Seeing no one, I guess we'll move forward to presentations, which are none. Moving to general business, action items, discussion and consideration of. Item C, approving a process for issuing an amended optional plan. We talked about this last week a little bit. I think it's clear. I just wanted people to have the opportunity if they didn't understand. I walked through last time kind of what the goal was. If anyone doesn't like that or if anyone has any suggestions on moving forward, essentially what we would do, we've put 3 items on the plan for today. Goal is to get out of here by 1 o'clock, make sure we're very timely, and then kind of focus on other issues as they come. If we could just direct focus onto the items presented before us. Districting, we're not talking about that today, so we just focus on the things that are here in front of us, and I think that'll be a clear, effective way to move forward. If anybody has a particular item that we've talked about that they want to review, what I've said is, bring it up. We've got 2 people who want to talk about it. Great. If it's only 1 person, my thoughts are that's not enough to even make a second, so why waste time on it? At this time, we've laid out 3 for today. We have other ones that are laid out in the future. We've got salary that we're talking about. We've got districts that we're talking about. We've got a deadline that we're proposing. If there's something that we have not added, please let me know. You can either email, you can speak up now, and if you have a second person, you can identify them by pointing at them or putting them in the email. Great. Marcy, questions on that?
So, my question is, do any of the corrections that we determine to make, are those all considered amendments? So for example, if we decide in the final analysis to go with all at large versus districts and at large, is that an amendment or is that a scrapping of the first plan and rewriting?
Right. There's 2 ways to do it. What Mr. Anderson had said previously is it might be clean. We can use the whole body of whatever we've made previously and just change the individual paragraphs because we have to reduce a lot of the dates throughout. Instead of doing an amendment to the previous, is what he said, we might just put a new document forward because the previous one was out of
Same
compliance.
thing.
But it is the same thing.
Okay. That's
Just
all.
at the end of the amendments, we'll have to adopt the whole thing.
Right. Right.
Does that make sense?
It's almost like a car. We're just fixing certain pieces of it and it's still going to be the same car.
True.
We might change the engine and a lot of things.
We might make it a Chevy when it was a Ford, but who
Right,
knows?
there you go, something like that. Does anybody right now have anything else that they want to add to the calendar for dates or scheduling? If not, we can move on. But if you have things that you say, hey, look, I want to revisit, and this is the only one that pops into my head, and I don't have any desire to revisit, but the things that we talked about were conflict of interest, how do we present those, if people want to talk about that, or some of the bigger things that we talked about, if you want to talk about them again, you could, or if there are things that we've never talked about and you have all of a sudden an inkling to talk about that. I have nothing in my mind, but if something comes up, please speak and let us know so that we can add it. I don't want to shut anybody out of the process. We've been very open with everything, and so if there's something like that, let me know. Ruth.
Well, so, Jerry Mizrahi, let me catch that.
How you feeling?
Oh, yeah. It's one of those days. It is.
Sorry.
We're glad you're here.
I'm glad I made it. Which
Ruth?
is,
Keep that music coming.
All right.
what
So,
I love to do. You see me just throw a phone today. It's part of the course.
Ruth?
So we're talking about the process for issuing an amended optional plan, and you all had made your motions last meeting about a month ago, and I have drafted up the agendas for your next 6 meetings based on that. However, and I have a set for you, if you like, and we can either talk about now or in future considerations, but the district, you're lined up next Friday to talk about correcting the whole districting portion, but the written supplemental report will not be ready in time. And so,
Wait.
What supplemental, are we talking about the report from
Christina Sloan, not that one necessarily, but one, I don't know if it's that one, if that's the same, or if that's,
So does she
Hers-
have a date when it will be ready?
so she's told me that she cannot be available, she asked to be available the first part of November, but she cannot be here November 8th. The chair and I talked about whether she needs to be here in person, and
And
does she present it? Does
Right.
Attorney Anderson present it? How does that work?
And my thought is, I don't know what the goal is with the optional report. I don't know if it's changing of position.
So we asked some questions.
Right. But I don't know if we want her to come and present it. How does the group feel? Do we want her to come give a presentation? Do we want her to just submit the report and us to read it? No desires either way.
I'm fine with it.
This is a report above and beyond what she's already submitted.
Because last time when she was here, we had a few questions. Chris Barrett had a question about a statute that referred to some numbers. Marcy
Yeah,
Till had a few
okay.
questions about different things.
This is the stuff that we've asked, not
Right.
her,
Right.
not her reading of our original.
Right. It's just some supplemental follow-up of why you think what you think is essentially a lot of the questions.
Is it gonna change it?
I don't know.
I have the 4 questions, if that's helpful.
Sure.
They're all about district stuff.
Right.
she refers to state code. Does state code blah, blah, blah imply that district boundaries must be included in the optional plan? Does that same state code give the voters the power to draw districts? Are district boundaries a necessary implementing provision under that code? And how does the county legislative body integrate the districts into the optional plan, if at all? And that's what she came away with from the September meeting.
Questions that we
Those
have.
were the
our
questions. And this was, you all were copied on all this.
Yeah.
Attorney Anderson has already weighed in, Chris Baird has weighed in, but we don't have a supplemental.
A day that she thought she might have that information by.
No, that is what I'm waiting on now. I don't have that date.
I don't think
But,
she needs to be here. I think we just need
Mid-November,
to read
you
it.
all are scheduled for November 15th?
Just, we don't need to debate it. We just need to read what her opinion is.
Okay, so we're set for districts on November 15th.
We're not, we could be. Is that what you're saying? I don't know that that's a date that works for her. That would be the earliest.
Well, I'm just giving her time.
Well, let's leave it there.
Leave it to where it's at.
Well, it's on next Friday.
Right, it's on next Friday. So do we want to push it out to November 15th or leave it
Yeah.
for next Friday?
She won't have it by next Friday.
So-
She was clear about that.
Okay, so does anybody have a motion to move it to November 15th at noon?
I'll make a motion.
Hey, Junior Carmichael makes a motion to move the topic of districting, but we're going to have to shift something to fill that void because I want to make sure that we're being productive.
Yes, you're on
Do
it.
you have copies of the proposed agendas?
Yes.
Maybe if you'd show Judy what was scheduled for the 15th and we can shift things around so that way.
Well, do you all want to each have one?
Oh, yeah,
Yes.
that'd be great.
Would that help? Okay.
Yeah, we all want to know.
So right now, and Jeremy, I know you came in halfway through this, but we're just talking about the plan for going through the optional plan, how we're wanting to fix it. I've pitched last time how I thought we could do it by having individuals, if they have things that they desire, at least two people wanting to change a specific thing or talk about a specific thing, we will put it on. Our meetings were intended to be 1 hour long, so we're not here for 7 hours. So that's kind of the goal. So if we could figure out what those,
So we're on hold. There's a motion, but you don't want a
Right.
second until we can look at this closer. All right.
Right.
And I do want to point out that next Friday, the 25th, that was the only thing scheduled for next Friday. So then you might want to think about moving dates up.
right, but the problem is,
Or-
on November 15th, we have reviewing a rough draft of the amended plan, which wouldn't be ready.
Let's move compensation up, except
Compensation.
We need Chris Baird for that.
But, yeah, we've got the dual or move the compensation back. So we've got two compensation. There's compensation about the county council members, but also Chris Baird really wanted to talk about
Compensation of
The-
the executive.
of the executive. He was concerned that by not putting in that salary range, that it would be more difficult for the county to hire the individual.
And
That
I-
wasn't necessarily a concern that we had, but that Chris Baird asked.
And
us about
if
that.
I remember, Christina had a concern about that too, didn't she?
Right.
So, yeah.
Can I go ahead and just move that one thing and we'll figure out how we're going to
Okay.
Let's move the districting that for the 15th on, so.
Okay, so we'll move, so the motion before us is to move the agenda item that's placed for October 25th, 2019, from that date to November 15th,
Okay.
right?
I second it.
Okay, we got a second by Cricket Green. Now we have 6 members present. Any discussion on it? Mr. Greenberg?
I was confused by the minutes, because it's not clear how many members were going to miss the November 1st meeting. The minutes make it appear as if only one
One.
member was going to.
Yeah, the goal was not to have more than 2 people missing. If there's 2 missing, we would want to.
And are there
So,
2 people missing November 1st? I'm raising this because I'm
Sure.
not available on the 15th. And if we could move some of our business forward, that would allow me to, I hate to miss the discussion on districting, it's going to be fun.
Okay.
and
And I just bet that districting's going to take more than one meeting unless you're going to have,
Having a meeting on November 1st. Why is it crossed off in my date book?
That's right.
We had-
We canceled it.
I no
I'm
longer,
not going to be here November 1st.
Just
Okay.
anyone
That's-
else not able to.
I'm going to be here now. My trial got canceled.
Oh.
So I'm available.
So if you're the only one who's not here, I want to suggest that we reinstate that November 1st meeting.
Do you have access
to
telephone?
Yes.
Do we think that's enough time for Christina to get us the information for the district?
I don't know, let me see.
Okay,
If I had to guess,
we could move compensation forward.
Yeah, we can move compensation to the first.
why don't we move compensation to the 25th?
Well, we were trying, I think, are we trying to add a meeting?
Yeah, what I'm saying is if we're having two meetings when I'm the only person who's going to be able to be here,
Well, that's a good thing, isn't it?
Why you think that's bad?
Come on.
That was by design.
All right, stay focused, stay focused. All right, stay focused. So it's a fair point, and you would like to talk about salary, and
I don't know, anything.
if everybody,
Anything.
yeah,
The weather, I'm okay.
right. Does it work for people's calendars to, and I'm not trying to force everybody to be here every single week, but we've got the 25th, we'll have the 1st, we'll have the 8th, we'll have the 15th, we'll have, so those 4 Fridays in a row. Can people make the 1st? Is it a burden? Okay. You're fine, Marcy?
I can come by phone.
You can
and
carry your
quite
phone?
frankly,
I would rather come every week for an hour
Okay.
and make sure that we've got our ducks in a row,
Okay.
rather than get to January and go.
Okay,
I am available every week, but the first week of December.
okay. So, no one said that they're not available on the 1st.
I can do it, yeah.
So, does anybody want to make a motion that we have? Do we need to make a motion?
Well,
Well, we have to have
we're-
public notice.
We've still got
We're
Judy's.
mid-motion.
We're getting ahead. We're gonna
Judy's
vote on
motion has
Judy's
been
motion.
seconded, right?
Yep.
Right,
we
and
just
we're
need to
on
vote on it.
discussion kind of about
Kind of on discussion.
Districting.
All these changes into.
one amended, or a substitute motion? Does someone have the power to do that?
Have you figured out what's on the October 25th agenda? Right now, you got nothing.
Right now, we're moving districting from the 25th to the what?
No, we're moving it,
15th of November.
we're moving it from, yeah, from the 25th to the
But
15th.
do you want to move compensation to the 25th?
Well,
If I could
Bob?
suggest that we leave what goes where to the chair.
Sure.
We just establish the meeting dates.
And I can take care of it. I can make sure that
He's good.
yeah,
we'll get everything where we want it to be. If you
That's
trust me.
ordinarily how agendas are developed.
Yeah.
So-
Right. So, okay. So we'll just adjust that then through me. We're good to, so do you want, we've got her motion then. Does anybody want to do anything with her motion? Do you want to withdraw your motion? Okay. So do you want to withdraw your motion? Okay, motion withdrawn.
So I'd like to make a motion that we reinstate the November 1 meeting.
Okay. We have a second on reinstating the November 1st meeting. We got a second.
Thank you.
Okay, any discussion about having a November 1st meeting?
I might regret this.
Just
None?
we have to be sure and
All in
notify
favor?
Yeah.
Right, all in favor of having the November 1st meeting? Okay, 6-0, unanimous.
So Bob, when are you gone again, the 8th? And
I'm leaving the
Okay,
outcome.
moving on to number D. Sorry, I'm not trying to cut people off, but we, power forward. Hey, perfect timing. We're on to item D, correcting the council interference with the executive section of the submitted optional plan titled Section 2.12 Prohibitions. There is something in the packet, if you guys glance back at that should be item D. It has some highlighted with the suggested changes. We'll let Mr. Anderson get himself set up. Just general discussions about that.
Just want to recognize that Mr. Anderson is now trained.
fully trained.
Mr. Chair, would you want to untable that other one first, or?
It depends. Mr. Anderson, do you want to talk about doing corrections, or do you want to give a report about what is happening at the fantastic state legislature later meetings?
I will do either. Whatever the committee's pleasure is, I apologize. I was at a Utah Prosecution Council training, which by happenstance was just down here at the lab and just got out. So I apologize for being a little bit late.
No worries. If anyone wants dealer's choice or preference, you can make a motion to untable one thing, or we'll continue with item D. All right, looks like we're continuing with item D. We'll do correcting the council interference with the executive section. The problem with that was regarding removing the manager, the language regarding the conflict between being able to remove him in open session and not. We're adding language to clarify that. Refresh everyone's recollection, and Mr. Anderson will explain it in better detail than I.
Yes, would you like me to address that then?
Yes, please.
Well, as we discussed before, I really didn't think this was a problem with the existing draft. It was just, I could probably take credit for some awkward language. Before, I think the provision that the county attorney had objected to in one section said the council can't interfere with the executive branch, and in another section talked about, well, it can if it does so in a properly convened meeting. And she found that that was disregarded the notion that the council can remove the executive. Is that familiar to everyone? Okay, and my thinking was, well, that's really not a conflict because if they were to remove the manager, that would have to be done in an open, or not open necessarily, depending on the circumstances, but in a properly convened meeting. So what I have suggested we change that to, and I'll take some credit for some less than clear drafting, and it is a little bit awkward. And I don't know what you have in front of you. It looks like, yeah, you've got exactly the right document. Yeah, it's, so we're looking at a paragraph, the number from the plan is section 2.12, prohibitions. There are 5 subsections, and then the 5th subsection has some highlighted language. You're all in the same place? Okay. So this is really just simply making more clear the language that the county attorney was concerned about. And it doesn't change the notion of the council doesn't interfere with executive branch activities, responsibilities, however, and so subparagraph B is a however, and the however is during a lawfully convened meeting. I changed that from open to closed session. Lawfully convened is probably a better term of art. To number 1, engage in any of its responsibilities in the plan or in state law. Added that to be clear. Go through this county manager removal process, which is set out in another section of the optional plan. And then from also just freely discussing, directing, suggesting, recommending the county manager or any employee of the executive branch to engage in anything pertaining to county affairs in the interest of the county, which I think is those 3 subsections, 1, 2, and 3, are clearly within the council's legislative authority while they're in a properly convened open meeting.
Mr. Anderson, does number 5 need to have a nested list? Could we strike the A and B's and put number 6, nothing in the section shall be construed? Does it need?
So it applied to the whole section 2.12?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, the other prohibitions are no other public office. It does not hurt anything. If you'd prefer to do it that way, that might be clearer.
Well, I just didn't know that. I mean, it is a however. I just didn't know if it was.
Well, I'm not sure it's however to paragraphs 1, 2, 3,
Sure.
and 4. Let me see.
It's just not listed as a however. It could just be nothing in the section shall be construed to prohibit the council while in a lawfully convened meeting from 1, 2.
Well, I'd hope we'd be able to make this absolutely sterling clear, so whatever the committee would prefer.
I'm just asking your opinion. It doesn't.
I think it more clearly applies only to subsection 5.
Okay.
The other subsections 1 through 4, really, the however doesn't seem to apply to them.
Okay. I'm fine with it being A and B. Do we want? Sorry, one more question. Do we want to change 1 from 1 to a small I, a small Roman numeral?
This may be the only one in the whole plan where we get down to that level.
Right.
I think we could certainly do that either way if there's a preference to do it that way.
Yeah. So there'd
What
be
the format is.
right of the second nested list. So it'd be.
Yeah,
so it'd
that's,
be A, B, and then Roman numeral I.
yeah, we certainly have Arabic numbers up below, up above.
Right.
For big subsections. So you want to do I, and I.
Yeah. Maybe
Okay.
I. Double maybe I.
comes after triple baby I?
IB.
IB.
Yep, we shoot it up at that point.
Love
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we amend section 212 prohibitions to include the language proposed by Mr. Henderson and before us today, with the change that in 5B, 1, 2, and 3 be retitled I, and III. This is pirate language.
You sound like Lucy Ricardo. That was Ricky Ricardo, excuse me.
Perfect. So we've got a motion before us to accept the amendments to section 2.12 as is, with the second nested list with Roman numeral I's instead of Arabic numbers. We have a second? Seconded by Judy Carmichael. Discussion. Mr.
And
Hubert.
Mr. Anderson should like this because it gives us an II in the plan.
Shiver me timbers and blow me down.
Perfect. Other discussion? Seeing none,
Straightforward.
we'll move to a vote. All in favor of approving the amended portions to section 2.12 with the edits of changing the numbers from Arabic numbers to Roman numerals in B 1 through 3. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? None. Unanimous, 6-0. Moving now to item E, correcting the election date section of the submitted optional plan titled section 5.02, adoption vote. Mr. Anderson, and we have something in our packet to refer to as well.
Yeah, that's, in the optional plan, it's optional plan section 5.02, so it's part of the transition plan. It's just an acknowledgement of the adoption vote. The county attorney's review stated that it was not within the authority of the study committee through the optional plan to set the election date. I kind of objected to that because this, as originally worded, did not set an election date, it just acknowledged an election date. So I think you might have either of two options, well, three options. Delete the entire paragraph, delete referral to any particular date, or change the date. It would change now anyway to November 2nd of 2020. I'm not sure I have a strong recommendation one way or the other. I have found it helpful in Salt Lake County's case to know when that election was held, sometimes decades later. I actually had someone came by my office a month ago and asked, now, when did we change the county form of government?
Could we put the date and then put or by statute, by permitted by state statute?
Or any other
Or,
date.
or any other date as provided by state statute. That
Or
might
maybe
do it.
the earliest date permitted by state statute.
There you go.
Should we do that?
Exciting.
That sounds good.
That gets
sounds
away
good.
from what I think she's worried about.
Yeah.
For the earliest date permitted by state statute.
So moved.
Yeah.
Perfect. So we've got a
Wait, so how's it gonna read?
Plan shall be considered adopted when approved by an affirmative vote of the majority of those voting on the question of its approval at an election to be held in Grand County at the earliest date allowed by state statute.
You want to delete any reference then to November 2, 2020?
Yes. As Cricket pointed out, it's always possible the legislature will allow special elections or do something else.
And would have a problem.
Well, then you miss an opportunity.
everyone clear as mud on what it reads.
So be held in Grand County on the earliest date?
At. Delete at and put, or on and add at.
Okay.
The earliest point permitted by statute, or earliest date, not point.
Earliest date provided by state statute.
Permitted.
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 Okay, so we've got a motion before us to adopt section 5.02 with the following amendment. It will read, to be held in Grand County at the earliest date permitted by state statute.
Second.
Second by Cricket Green. Any discussion? No discussion. Move to a vote. All in favor of adopting section 5.02 with the amended language? We have 6 in favor. Passes unanimously. Moving now to section F, correcting, quote, removal of office, end quote, section of the submitted optional plan titled, quote, section 5.04 prior optional plan. Inside your packet, you'll notice item F with one page with highlights, and then Salone's, County Attorney Salone's information behind that. Mr. Anderson, take it away.
All right. So again, in the transition part of the optional plan, section 5.04, and that refers to Grand County's prior optional plan, 1992, does a repealer, and then there's, I included, and this was really belt and suspenders, it's probably, subparagraph 2 is probably not even necessarily necessary, but this is a provision from HB 224 that says no county can have a plan that has nonpartisan elections, recall, or term limits. And so that says so specifically in the statute, HB 224. I thought it valuable to put it in here. I probably should not have done that. But the county attorney's review, at the very last line of subsection 2, I had worded, may not be recalled or removed from office except by the judicial removal process set out in state law. The county attorney focused on a statute in the election code that allows removal under some circumstances of county officers by a medical removal process, mental illness. I pointed out to the county attorney that statute, that removal statute, is probably unconstitutional. She was not impressed by that argument. And so it's a simple enough fix. Well, the simplest fix is to completely remove subparagraph 2, not make any reference at all, on the theory that that would be all covered by state statute, or simply remove the word judicial from that last line.
Mr. Greenberg?
Well, we'd also have to remove the, in number 1, upon this plan being effective, we should strike on January 6, 2021. So upon this plan becoming effective, comma, the former optional plan.
Of course.
So I think those are two simple fixes, and I'll move their adoption.
Can I add one? Can I have one more suggestion? It might not matter, but the last line of paragraph 2, removal process set out in state law, would provided by be a better, more clear? Might just be nitpicking.
Oh, that's fine.
I would just get rid of the second paragraph. That's
Me too.
That's all in the Utah code. It's redundant.
Use with that. Looks like crickets with that. I don't have a preference. Either way. Bob was making a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt 5.04 with a change in paragraph 1 to read, upon this plan becoming effective, comma, the former optional plan of Grand County government adopted in 1992 is repealed and no further legal force or effect, and to strike paragraph 2.
Second.
Got a second. We've got a motion to adopt section 504, prior optional plan, reading as follows. Number 1, upon this plan being effective, comma, the former optional plan of Grand County government adopted in 1992 is repealed and has no further legal effect or force, period, and that is the end of the section, and we would delete paragraph 2. Discussion on that? Seeing no other discussion. Seeing no other discussion, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of adopting section 5.04, prior optional plan, reading paragraph 1, upon this plan becoming effective, comma, the former optional plan of Grand County government, comma, adopted in 1992, comma, is repealed and has no further legal force or effect, period. All in favor, please raise your hand. Passes unanimously, 6-0.
Okay, this date, I'm glad we brought up the date in subparagraph 1. I had not noticed that. It requires us to go through a little carefully with the plan and make sure we haven't specified any date elsewhere, but that would also include the issue of staggering the terms. for the council members. You remember we had wanted to stagger the terms in such a way that now I'm looking at, do you have a section with some blue highlighting?
No.
This is probably not readable, for which I apologize.
No, we didn't get
Oh.
that.
Wait a minute, I think that's about districting. That's saved for your districting conversation on a different date.
Okay, but it does relate just to dates, so we can wait until we get to the other section if you'd like.
And we don't have that today anyway.
We've only got two more things to go over, item G and item B as in boy.
Okay.
G as in gamma, B as in beta.
Well, let's try and remember to take that up when we get to the districts.
Okay.
You might make it over.
I'll make a motion to untable B.
Second,
Okay, we got a motion to untable item B, which is report on state legislative committee meeting schedule. All in favor? Please raise your hand. Passes unanimously. So we're going to move now to general reports. Item B, report on state legislative committee meeting schedule. Mr. Anderson.
Yes, there's been two interim meetings. Interim meetings are the meetings that the legislature holds once a month throughout the summer and fall. They are divided up by committees. There's a committee on state and local government subdivisions, and they've taken this up twice now. No, I take it back. The interim committee's taken it up once, and this would have been in August. And the discussion was, is there something wrong with HB 224? And if so, do we need to fix it? And there was a very general discussion. I was not able to attend that meeting. It was a presentation by the Utah Association of Counties, and the presentation did focus on, yes, there's lots of problems with HB 224. I don't think they spoke about specifics. They talked about, in very general terms, the change in form of government process as set out in 224. I do think they brought out that spaghetti bowl flow chart again, which is kind of amusing if you could make any sense out of it. And asked UAC if they had specific recommendations. They did not have anything specific yet, other than a desire to make the process simpler, more obvious, more easy to understand. There was a promise made by the two chairs, representative and senator. Each interim committee over the summer has chairs from both houses, that there was a promise that no optional plan process currently underway would be interfered with by amendments to HB 224. I hate to say how much a promise by an individual legislator is worth, but that at least is on the books. And we don't know what a representative from San Juan County may want to do. Following that meeting, there was a second meeting, this one held by UAC's Public Policy Directions Committee. It's a committee made up of different elected offices from around the state. I was invited to attend to talk just briefly about HB 224. I think there was general recognition that there are significant problems with the existing statute, primarily related to the process, to the confusing process. The UAC had received instructions in this interim committee to make the process simpler. There was mention made that they maybe make two processes, one for large counties and one for small counties. Well, I should put my personal opinion in there, but I'm not sure that's necessary. If you can come up with a clear process, there doesn't seem to be a reason why it wouldn't apply to both. What they had not focused on, and this is going to be completely up to the study committee as to whether you want to memorialize either UAC or the state legislature as to issues regarding the extent to which the study committee is independent of the existing county government, is something other than a advisory committee, which Walt would probably stand up on his chair and make comments about that were he here. I explained some of the problems that had come up in terms of this issue of authority of the existing county government to be involved in the process. I thought it was significant that the existing county government doesn't get to pick the study committee, doesn't even get to pick the committee that picks the study committee. There's an obvious intent there for an arm's length distance. And it had raised concerns with election dates. We need to get with Chris. I know he's got some specific election date problems between the election code and HB 224. It was a problem with setting the districts. The issue is whether or not the council, the existing government, the county council sets districts, or the optional plan sets districts. The UAC fellow Lincoln Schertz, who's their chief lobbyist, had not realized that those were issues as well, and he is going to include them in UAC's position, depending on what the proposal ends up being.
Do you have an idea of what their position is?
They seemed very much interested in, obviously, in making the process simpler. And I'm fairly confident they're also interested in clearing up the relationship between the existing county government and the study committee. I wouldn't be able to tell you which direction they would want to go in terms of clarifying that relationship.
That's what I wanted to know, if possible.
I just barely, not 2 hours ago, attended a presentation by Christina Sloan in which she reiterated the thought that she thinks giving the districting boundary power to the study committee is unconstitutional. I don't know if she would feel strongly enough about that to enter into the discussion at all at the legislature. That I don't know. So I think we'd be confident there will be a clarification of the relationship.
Mr. Greenberg?
Question. My understanding of county attorney's objection on this committee taking upon itself setting the boundaries was not that it was unconstitutional, but it was not explicitly delegated.
I think
I think so.
I think it's a little of both.
I-
Bob, she made it clear in this presentation 2 hours ago before this training that she thought having the study committee do the boundaries was unconstitutional, that the statute could not be changed in such a way that it expressly gave that authority to the study committee. I, for my part, don't agree with that. I do think the legislature can expressly delegate that power to the study committee, and whether they want to do it that way or the other way would be up to the legislature. It does create some snowball problems that would need to be addressed as well.
Main underlying statement that she said over and over again was it's unconstitutional.
Okay. Staying on topic with the report, other things that you've heard, Mr. Anderson?
I did talk to the attorney from Morgan County. He frankly agrees with Ms. Sloan that it would be unconstitutional. Morgan County's plan that they've recommended, they only did a recommendation report. They didn't do an actual plan, which is really kind of curious. In their recommendation report, they have 5 commissioners, extended county commission, with districts. And rather than set out the districts in the optional plan, they have asked the existing county council to create the districts for the commissioners.
So there's no optional plan whatsoever?
It is the strangest thing. Well, it's second to Tooele counties. It is the strangest thing I've ever seen. It looked like it was a kind of a flashy-looking executive summary of what we did, what we talked about. The actual content of the plan out of a multi-page document was maybe not even a full page.
Did they have an attorney?
I don't know the answer to that. I know their county attorney didn't have any involvement in it whatsoever. He asked me, what am I going to do about coming up with an actual transition plan? And I said, I know a Snappy went out of Grand County. The only problem is it's unlawful. But he and I will work together on seeing what he thinks he needs to put in place. It's a little bit curious, and I think, again, coming back to the idea that the study committee comes up with the optional plan, I think we may have to characterize it, I shouldn't say we, it's him, that he's going to have to characterize it as, these are the things in your optional plan you have to change, and then have the study committee convene again and adopt his very specific codifiable transition plan and, the other things that are required. Very interesting anyway.
Apart from that, any other reports or anything else from the state legislature? Next meetings, if
yeah,
they're going to make any action on
there will be an interim committee in November. I'm not sure the date. They usually happen on the second or third Wednesday. Whether they have one in December I don't know, because they usually cut off the interims in December, certainly in January. I can track that down and send a note back here to the committee if you'd like.
Mr. Greenberg? And
Kevin, do I understand you correctly that the interim committee asked UAC to come up with a proposal?
Yes, yeah. The interim committee did request that of UAC. That's not unusual. That kind of thing, it really happens all the time. And UAC, again, back to the UAC policy committee meeting, their next steps are going to be to ask for a small group of people who are willing to work on changes to HB 224. Whether or not I get involved in that is going to be up to my boss. But they're definitely, both UAC and the interim committee are going to want to have a bill prepared. And I think the hopeful point is they want to have a bill that corrects HB 224, regardless of some of these other big elephants in the room, the problems in Utah County, the problems in San Juan County.
Ms. Till?
So, what is the best way for this study committee to formally share its discoveries and frustrations
Marcy?
and recommendations to, is it to UAC or is it to the legislature, and is it via you or is it via some kind of a document from this group?
Could we maybe hold that thought to Friday?
I thought we decided that already, actually.
Right.
Okay. So we'll hold that till G.
I agree with Jeremy. All of the above. As many different fora as we can come up with,
Skywriting.
the better.
Any other questions on the report itself? Okay. Seeing none, we'll move on to item G, discussion on policy discussion and approving changes to proposed summary of recommended legislative action to ultimately be sent to members of the state legislature regarding 2018 House Bill 224 as it relates to the state mandated change in Grand County's form of government. Mr. Anderson.
All right. So at the study committee's request, I have begun working on a list of some of the problems in HB 224.
And this is in your packet.
And this is in your packet. Heading is considerations regarding Chapter 1752A, change in form of county government. And the way I would feel most comfortable personally with dealing with this is there are quite a bit of things in there that are major policy issues. And as they are policy issues, that's not my department. That would be something where I hope the study committee could give me directions, both in revising these considerations and otherwise proceeding forward.
So if you haven't read this, take a moment. It's 3 pages, kind of read through it.
Yeah.
We can either wait to recommend what we want to put in this plan, or there are a couple different ways of setting this up. As Mr. Anderson mentioned, we could have communication with either their interim group, with our state legislators. We could do it in sending him with this information, although he doesn't want to be the messenger in the sense of creating the terms, but we would give it to him for more of a delivery service as opposed to him lobbying or advocating on behalf. We could send individuals up to Salt Lake to attend a meeting, or we could write letters, talk to the interim committee, however it may be. This lays out the different areas that we've talked about. Inside here, there are things, hot topic issues such as item number 9, which is clarifying the role of the county attorney, budget appropriations. So if everybody can, make sure you read through that. If people haven't read it and don't feel comfortable approving it today, we can take some time to look at this. My understanding is that they're going to meet, you said the first or second Wednesday in November, and then that interim group ends in December, is that?
Yes, I believe so, and I don't know what UX proposed timetable is. The rule of thumb is you really need to have a complex bill ready in November, and I don't know if that's a UX timetable, but I suspect they'll go in that direction.
So my instinct would be that everybody looks at this and we come back to propose or to finalize this on the 18th, or on the 25th, and have it to them. Probably we would get it to Mr. Anderson on the 25th or on the first Monday after that. That would give, does that give them sufficient time to look at it prior to making any decisions?
I would think so, yes.
Okay.
So move.
So we've got a motion to table this item and come back
Postpone
to
it, yeah.
postpone this item to October 25th as an action item made by Mr. Greenberg. If I
Second.
stated that correctly. It's been seconded by Mr. Day. Any discussion on it? Mr. Greenberg?
Just a couple of things. I would love you to add to the list something concrete about the lifespan of this committee.
Isn't it a life sentence, Bob? Don't
Yeah,
you-
right.
Well, it is, it's
Because-
an interesting,
Because initially, we heard opinions that when we submitted our plan, that passed legal scrutiny, that we were done. But we've also heard that that's not the case, and we can continue forever. Just that we have to get the plan in by that date. So that's one concern, as you all know I have. I would suggest we let Chris Baird carry his own water in terms of Roman 3, the inconsistencies with the election code. That's not as much our issue as it is his, and he's, as you point out, he's in a budget crunch at the moment, so I think he ought to carry his own water on that. He's certainly the right one to do that, and will be heard as a county clerk auditor.
But that wouldn't strike 6, would it?
No, just,
Right.
no, just Roman 3.
And would it strike Roman 7?
There, back to elections really quickly. I think I have neglected to include this notion that we ought to revise the future election schedule. You know, we've talked about the potential for electing officers at a special election or at a municipal primary, municipal general election, so we don't have to wait all the way till 2022 to elect officers. I forgot to put that in.
Yeah.
That's a major policy decision for the study committee to make.
And that would probably be a perfect place for 3. Yeah.
Replace 3.
Okay.
So if people throughout the week have comments on that, I would encourage you to get it to Mr. Anderson prior and make notes on it. That way he will be able to flush through it. If there's items that you want to discuss now, we can, but I want to make sure all the ideas that we have are not half-baked and they're fully formed. Marcy?
So even if this committee had gotten underway initially, let's say 3 months prior to March, so if we started in December, we still would be taking this plan to the voters. Could it have been in 2019? Okay. Right, because the problem with the timeline now is
We can't amend it with.
there's no one to champion this plan in fall of 2020
If we dissolve.
as a committee. And so,
I think that to me is the most significant consideration regarding the life of the committee. Typically, I think 1 year would be plenty of time for, other than the problems that Grand County faced. I am certainly sensitive to Bob's concern about this not going on forever. But if this committee ceases to exist in the first part of March, that could be a year before election date, or at least, it would be.
We need some clarification there.
Yeah. Plus, even though further public outreach is not mandatory by the study committee, it is optional, and I would read the statutes being strongly recommended that the study committee continue to be the voice of the form of government to the public.
Well, couldn't it be written some way that it doesn't dissolve until after the bill, it's voted up or down?
It's possible.
I mean,
Yeah, that'd just
after
be a
it's
long
elected
time.
on. Well, but
Right.
but we would still
Fair,
not
fair,
have
fair.
meetings if we didn't need to, if we're just waiting.
Right.
Well, that would
That's-
make your,
That's a possibility.
you know,
The tenure would just be long.
Yeah.
so that would extend the life of the committee about 6 or 7 months.
Yeah. Other things that we want to point out, Mr. Greenberg?
I think 9 is a live rail, particularly given the fact that county attorneys are a significant part of UAC. And as Gavin has pointed out, if his office had to choose between us and the county attorney, it'd be the county attorney. And I suspect that's probably across the state. We should discuss this more, but as the county attorney is the elected attorney for the county, I don't see any, I see it's tilting at windmills to try and remove county attorneys from their current role, which is crystal clear in HB 224. It's one of the few things that is.
Yeah, I agree
actually.
completely. It is a lightning rod. There's not a very attractive alternative.
The AG's office certainly will lobby against
No.
being involved in
They
that.
would not want to do this at all.
I think also we should consider recommending that the Republican parties be enjoined from lawsuits on this matter.
So,
There is an open courts provision in the Utah Constitution, so that might not be.
I think
Nice try,
what the
Bob.
goal of getting it, clarifying the role for the county attorney, I think the frustration, and I might be speaking, I'm just speaking from a position that I see, I'm not saying that this is Mr. Anderson's position, but I think last week, last time we met, Mr. Greenberg made a comment that said, hey, look, we should probably just send our questions directly to Christina. And that was kind of, that summed up what Mr. Anderson's role seems like to me, is that now his advice doesn't, and I mean this in the nicest way,
Doesn't carry any water.
doesn't carry any water.
I agree.
And
Stephen
that's-
I have had this discussion.
And that's the difficulty, because if we say, Mr. Anderson, does this pass muster? And he goes, yes, it does. It looks great. And then he turns it over to her and she says, no, it doesn't fly. Then that's kind of the awkward position. But there's no way to there's no way to say to the legislature, hey, look, this is what theoretically could happen, and have them fix it. I think it's hopeful, but I don't know if it's true. It might be tilting
Well-
at windmills.
On the one hand, you had the question of what's the involvement of the existing
Right.
government, and Christina is, of course, part of the existing government. On the other hand, is where do you get, hopefully unbiased, and to me, not just literally unbiased, but the perception of bias is almost a problem, review of the thing, and the role of, my role after county attorney's review. What would you think if the statute said at that point, coming up with the final revised, amended, optional plan is responsibility of the county attorney?
That would make more sense.
It would.
Because we're in that position now. Because
Right.
even if you agree with everything we put, it goes back to her. And I think, in my mind as an attorney, looking at what we do, Mr. Anderson is here to get us to the finish line. And he's done that, he's drafted the plan, he's got us there. But if his ideas diverge from what the county attorney's position is, then it doesn't really matter what his position is on things.
Exactly.
So,
It's really a
It's
confusion to my
problematic
attorney-client.
because it puts a lot of decision-making power in the county attorney's hands. Maybe that's where it should be. That person is an elected official. However, if they do have a strong feeling one way or the other about a particular form of government or a particular, how it's going to be carried out, they have the capability to flex that muscle.
Mr. Greenberg, then Jeremy?
Well, the only way out I could imagine would be calling out a committee of county attorneys that's not gonna happen either. I don't think there's a way out of this, frankly.
I think so. That's one of the big issues.
I think there is a way for the legislator to put it in there. It's a simple check and balance. What we don't have the option to do is to challenge her ruling.
Right.
Simple as that.
That might be the
And if that option was there to challenge that ruling and go to a judge, and
That's where
it's-
my proposal to enjoin lawsuits comes in.
I mean, and it comes down to the point where I get it and it's convoluted, but the reality of it is,
if you have a disagreement
look
between
at it as
yeah.
the sword of Damascus hanging over your head. I mean, if a county attorney, and I'm not saying this is what happened in this case, but I am saying in generalization of the law, checks and balances are important within government, period. Otherwise, what happens without checks and balances is you have too much power swinging over here to be abused. The check for any attorney is a judge. That is the process set forth by our government. If we had the ability to challenge a ruling, if by some means we were good cattywampus and it was beyond what's constitutional, what's not constitutional, theoretically, if we had, and I'm just saying hypothetically, a county attorney, whether it was a Democrat or Republican, went completely rogue and started to interfere, there's no way in this committee to stop that. And that, to me, seems like it's just bad language within the law to have no checks and balance to say, okay, here, spell out what the county attorney is to do this. And if the county attorney doesn't do this or oversteps this, where's the repercussions for that county attorney? There's really none in this law. So, I mean, I get what Bob's saying is like, and I get what everyone's saying, but there can be an opportunity in there to say, hey, and it's not going to affect us at this point, but in the future going on in recommendation to the legislature is to say, hey guys, if there is some type of politicizing of this entire system and a county attorney decides to go rogue and swing that big stick, how do we check and balance that? And I mean, it's not for me to decide, that'd be up for the legislature, but what is that check and balance for that county attorney in this situation?
I've got Cricket then Bob.
Oh, no, not cricket.
Huh?
I didn't raise my hand.
Oh, okay, fine.
But thank you.
Just Bob.
Thank you very much.
I'll speak for you here.
No, Bob will not speak for me, no.
Two thoughts here. One is trying to envision the county allocating funds for us to sue the county is really a non-starter. That ain't going to happen. That's the first problem. I just sat in on the appeals court arguments over the Moab City planning and zoning issue. Unless the legislator created a special judicial review process out of whole cloth, I don't see anything happening. And the issue of funding, of us hiring an attorney, I mean, we have a budget of $10,000 for your services, Gavin, and we're getting a hell of a deal because we're really just paying your office's costs. But if we start talking about a lawsuit, $10,000 is just a drop in the bucket. Boy, if you remember what happened in San Juan County when the public discovered how many millions of dollars they've spent on lawsuits, all of which they've lost, I think it'd be a giganto problem. I mean, maybe we can figure something out, but I don't think we have yet.
Right.
I guess is what I'm saying.
Well, and I don't know that we can. I mean, but it is a legislature thing, more a legislative thing. But there's the question of checks and balances. There's really no check or balance for the county attorney within this process if they go off.
Well, period.
Yeah,
have to
period.
say-
Period.
So overall, one thought, we're just kind of figuring out if we want to say anything to them through this letter and list it out and say, look, these, we don't have to, I don't mean to be somebody that just complains without any solution. We can just raise the idea, we don't have to fix their problems for them. They might look at it and say, yeah, we don't care, and move on with life.
I would be okay with raising the issue.
Right, and just saying, hey, look, this is the conundrum that we're in. We have,
Right.
We as a study committee hired an attorney. We got to a position where if his legal advice conflicted with the county attorneys, what do we do? Do we just accept the legal advice of that? And we can just pose that,
Well, right
period.
now, the answer is yes.
Right, right. And it's
But
it's
that's
more that.
something that'd be appropriate for them to look at. I
Right,
don't know if they'll
and we
figure it
don't
out.
have to waste time on fixing it for them.
I mean, I think the whole point of this is to just say, these are some of the problems we've had. In case you didn't know, FYI, and
Right.
Just nobody's watching.
maybe you haven't thought that this, maybe you hadn't thought in the future, like, this could be a problem, and how, are there ways to deal with it? So I don't think we're saying fix it, I'm saying, hey, this is what happened to us.
This is our Yelp review.
Yes.
Of HB 224.
Yes. Best message yet.
I just was thinking about
Yeah,
that,
don't write
section
that down.
3, that section 3 that you all have already replaced it with something else. It was Chris Baird who asked to be, to have his voice in this list of problems, and so now we've taken it out. So I just want to,
Well, we haven't taken it out. I just suggested we take it out.
We haven't done anything.
you haven't done anything yet.
Right.
Correct, thank you.
It's not an action item today, this is all discussion.
Well,
It is
technically an action
Oh,
item.
is it?
Yeah, but I said we probably haven't fully
I
formed.
mean, the
our-
real question is, can Chris give us something by
Well,
our
he did,
deadline?
you did in the email.
Right.
I haven't seen that.
And I don't know what his timing is on the proposed budget. The budget process really begins at the end of November and has to be concluded at the end of December. So I don't know at what point his heavy workload is, or when it's over.
Ruth, when did we get that email?
I actually just forwarded it again yesterday or the day before as an attachment, but he had sent it back on September 30th in response, and all of you all were copied on it, in response to Christina's 4 districting questions that I already laid out earlier today.
I saw that.
So he responded in a fairly lengthy email.
We've already postponed the decision of this till next week anyways. So
We'll
if we
look at
want,
that.
we will look at it next time we meet.
That's right.
And we'll go through it from there, unless anybody else has some other burning desire to talk about a particular thing in public
So
here.
if we have any questions or suggestions, we can email Gavin directly.
Email the group.
Okay.
Email the entire group so everybody, we can see what's going on. Okay.
And actually, I'm not sure you all voted. So I've got that Bob
Okay.
moved and Jeremy seconded to move this to October 25th.
Okay.
And there's been a lot of discussion.
Any other discussion on the issue of postponing item G from this meeting till the 25th? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of moving discussion item G and possible action on it to the October 25th, 2019 meeting at noon, please vote in affirmative. Passes unanimously 6-0. Any other conversation about this? Seeing none, Mr. Anderson.
Just to be clear with my attorney-client relationship, I've mentioned most of these points to UAC. It is, I guess, technically attorney-client work product between myself and you 7 folks. I just want to make sure it's okay with you as clients that I continue to work with UAC based on what I've provided for you.
With our position.
Yeah.
There might be some divergence between the two.
Yes, that's
Right.
true.
Absolutely. Much smiles and nods.
Okay.
You'll
Moving,
get them, Gavin.
Better than you.
okay, moving to consent.
I personally think that this committee has the most boots on the ground information for UAC.
But what went wrong?
Right. So,
There's a lot of truth to that. Nobody else, no other county has gone through this
It
kind of
would-
process,
it-
especially under 224.
And it would be nice if UAC ever, if they ever wanted to come before this body, that a representative. I've met with them in meetings and stuff, and I mean, they are aware of it. They're very aware of it.
And
But yeah,
And UAC has ebbed and waned over the last 5 years, maybe, in terms of, it's had some management problems. They've got a new executive CEO. I'm sensing that it's probably going to be on the upswing for the future. And UAC has always been very effective on the Hill. So if we can make sure they're aware of what our concerns. Yeah, Lincoln Schertz is their chief lobbyist. He used to be with the League of Cities and Towns. He's very, very effective. Their new executive director is Brandy Grace, who is a former county assessor, I believe, out of Millard County. And
What happened
also
to Adam?
can we
I
run
haven't got-
through, we can run
Everybody's-
through the rest of that afterwards. We'll just get through the rest of the items. So moving on to consent agenda action items, there are none. Moving to discussion items, there are none. Moving to discussion and possible action on study strategy, there are none. Moving to public hearings, possible action items, there are none. Future considerations, we've got a few things that Ms. Till has noted that we don't have on the agenda, that we will be adding to the agenda, and that will be our recommendation and report document. We'll have to revise that, so that'll be added. Contacting the,
We have that.
we do?
It's on one of the agenda items from
Is
your
it?
motion last time. It is
know.
on November 8th.
Oh, okay, there it is. Okay.
And so the big question there is, how do you want to characterize it? What format? Do you want to call it an amended recommendation report? Do you just want to call it the
I would-
recommendation report?
My inkling would be to call it the report instead of the amended report.
And can't you date it? So that makes it very clear.
Yep. The next would be discussing how we want to contact, and I think we've discussed that through item G. And then next, we have the committee to outline public campaign for optional plan, and we'll add that to one of the action items. I just wanted everybody the opportunity to hear those that were already there. Any other discussion, future considerations, questions, comments, concerns?
I'm sorry. Could I ask you to repeat those?
Yes.
Thank you.
Revising and fleshing out recommendations and report that is already listed on one of the agendas, so that's taken care of. The second was Grand County contact info to state legislature regarding HB 224. It means how we're going to contact them. We've already discussed that through item G. And then the last would be a committee to outline the publicity campaign for the optional plan in 2020. Marcy, one of the themes that she's been bringing up is the fact that her concern that there will be no one to quote champion this item moving
So
forward.
if three of us, as a subcommittee, my vision for this is that we work on this as a study committee until we are officially or unofficially disbanded, but that we have some kind of a plan in place for how we're gonna get the word out and manage this in 2020, and that then we can meet in groups of three, do whatever the heck we want.
Marcia, you raise a really important issue. How will we dissolve this committee?
I think it dissolves by operational law, the
That's
statute
what
says.
I thought just done.
Well, that we have conflicting opinions on that. Mr. Baird has opined that we're only required to provide an optional plan within a year, and that the committee,
It's dissolved at
life.
that point.
Well,
Does
Well-
he say that the committee is dissolved at the point an optional plan is provided?
I don't know. That's good. That's my question, I
He
guess.
did not say that.
and if we have not spent our $10,000 budget line item, which we probably have, do we have the
Time to
authority now, this year,
To future budget.
to make some kind of a budget request for 2020 for our
Yeah, you could.
presentation to the
We
community?
pretty clearly have that authority.
Okay, apart from those things. We're 20 minutes over, people.
This
Killing me.
rabbit hole better end.
All right. We have a motion to close this out. Motion to adjourn.
You-
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll try to make an hour next time.
So what time?
The time is 1:19.
I think we did excellent.
Is your budget year June?
Yeah. Calendar.